All right.
This is tonight. This is.
So,
This is the next one.
recap. Read every word. I mean, every word. It's just crazy. We're going to talk about some key words tonight that if you just read through it, you think one thing, but then when you start looking at it, you go, okay, maybe this, but it could be this over here, which changes things and makes it completely different. Because some people are expecting to see Revelation unfold like a certain thing, like they got to figure it out. It's going to happen like this, and until they see the snowball start rolling, they're and nothing to worry about. I'll be here forever. But Jesus said, be ready. And chapter 25 of Matthew, he's talking about the women in the wedding party waiting. You have to be ready. You can come at any time. So anyway, we'll talk about some different things of how words are so important and how they can be misinterpreted. But the 7 letters to the 7 churches, which may only have been to the churches, but since it says for those who have ears to hear, probably there's a deeper meaning there for us to kind of dig through. This is not something, also, just kind of give you guys a heads up. We're going to finish Revelation, and you're going to go, wow, did Revelation, check the box. You probably need to go back and read it again, and then read it again, and all the notes are going to be saved electronically out there. If you want to go back and refresh your mind or something like that, and go, well, what does that mean? Okay, because you're going to see things again that make more sense the second time you read through something, and especially if you dovetail in some of Daniel, which we skipped over, or in Isaiah. But the main part of Revelation, which is on the chart here at the beginning, is the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 bowls over here. Now they have them all nice and sequential, start, finish. Actually, the 7 seals, what I like about that is they show the lines going all the way across. Because a lot of things in Revelation they tell you when it starts, like, the angel blew the trumpet and this happened, okay? But it doesn't say it happened immediately, like that minute. It means that it happened. And it doesn't say how long it happened for, Maybe it was something that lasted 10 minutes, It was, you'll see something where it talks about something happening. And people say, well, since that hasn't happened, we're not there yet. Well, maybe it's something that builds over time. Because one thing that Jesus kept mentioning and we'll get back to it, the discord in Matthew 24, the Olivet Discord, is that things are going to build over time. It's like, it's labor pains. They're going to keep, it'll build. It's not going to be like everything's a flash of lightning, boom, 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 boom. It's something that starts out slow, and just as in the days of Noah, people were going about marrying and partying, and they didn't even see it coming because it built over time. It's just kind of like gradual things. So that's what he warns us about. The second chart here I like. The first chart I took off the rapture. It's not on here anymore. So I made it disappear. I raptured the rapture. Because, and that's one thing, we don't know when the rapture is. It could be back here. It could be somewhere here. We know it can't be too late because, let me rephrase that. If it is very, very, very late, like at the end, then God has to protect us, like he was protecting some of the Israelites, we'll talk about, the Jewish nation, because he says he's not going to pour out his wrath on the church. He promises that. He says, I promise you, you will not endure my wrath. You've been faithful to the end, you be faithful, and you'll be with me in heaven. You will not endure my wrath. So the likelihood of it being here is not as great because that's where all the wrath happens. We'll get to that. But we can be real close to that. End times here, this one, and Revelations is always referred to as Daniel's 70th week, and we didn't cover Daniel that much, but it's written for the Jewish nation. Revelation is primarily for the Jewish nation. It's how they get brought back to God from being, they crucified Jesus, they deny Jesus to this day. It's illegal, verboten, for a Jew to read the New Testament. They're not allowed to do that. They're not even allowed to have one. They'll be ostracized. The Jewish couple here, they accepted Jesus, became Messianic Jews. Their family completely, probably rejected them. I didn't deal with it. He basically said, he told me it's difficult. I had a friend in college, a girl we hung out with, and she accepted Jesus and became a Christian, told her parents. They took all of her stuff, put it in the front yard, and had a funeral for her. So that's how they treat people that become Christians. I mean, they literally had a funeral for her and never talked to her ever again, refused to communicate to her in any way, shape, or form.
They may have at some point, but
Well, after we left, as long as we knew her parents adamantly had nothing to do with it. So it's tough. But this particular one shows this, again, everything's tied up to the 7-year period. It starts when there's a covenant, a signing of a treaty, allowing the Jews to exercise more activity on the Temple Mount and stuff like that. Something that happens that makes that happen. Once that happens, the fuse is lit. It's literally 1,260 days, and that's when the 2 witnesses will be prophesying. They get killed. We'll talk about that later. And then there's another 1,260 days, which is where the more intense stuff happens. Now, we don't know. People always like to think, well, the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. So it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Well, we don't know that. I mean, the seals could be going on through the whole time. The trumpets could be going on for portions of it. And the bowls could literally happen, all 7 of them, in a day, in a couple hours. We don't know. We'll talk about the timing of some of those things. But I've got some notes in the bottom of this one I stuck in here. The exact timing of the seals isn't disclosed. Rapture isn't disclosed, although we know it's going to be some either pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib-ish. I mean, Jesus' church we'll all go to heaven. 7 years, the covenant starts, the rebuilding of the temple, 2 witnesses. I mean, God says it's exactly 1,260 days that they're witnessing, and then they die on the 1,260th day, to the day. So you know what it is. And we also know that the seals, trumpets, and bowls have increasing intensity, and we're going to see that today. Things are going to get more and more interesting, if you will. So, jumping in, you can reference the last page. It's kind of I got 2 different images I like that kind of show the 7 seals, or the 7 trumpets. The 2 little, there's an interlude here we'll talk about. And here are the 7 trumpets here on this side. And they're actually broken up into 4 and 3, and we'll go through that. So, jumping in. I don't have a phone, so you're going to have to read for me. So we're starting in Revelation 8 and 9, where it talks about, the angel on the altar hurls lightning, and there's an earthquake. So the question is, mid-trib rapture. Now would be a good time, when the angel starts throwing stuff out and things get worse. But the 7 trumpets start in verse 8 or 7, and they progressively worse. So the first trumpet is the first 4 trumpets I have here on the left are things happening to the earth, okay? To the earth. That's what the focus is. It's the earth. So the first one in Revelation 7 it says that hail and fire is hurled down on the earth. And then it talks about, it'll mention blood a lot in both the trumpets and the bowls. And the thought is that the Jewish nation and the earth, killed all the prophets and spilled their blood. They killed Jesus, spilled his blood. And it's something that he used as a plague against Egypt, and now he's using it in Revelation at the end time. But the first trumpet says a third of the earth was burned up. That sounds pretty devastating, doesn't it? Right? Now, it could be, the English, anybody have it there, verse 7?
I got it.
Okay?
The first sounded, and there came hail and fire, mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up.
Okay, let's just stop there for a second. So, that's a lot. I mean, technically, if you take North America, Central America, and South America, that's a third. That's a third of the earth. You know?
We're not mentioned later.
Yeah. but when you look at the word, I guess it's G for earth, right? It means earth. It could also be interpreted as land, country, or region. It could be a third of a region, an area was burned up.
It doesn't mean the planet, not necessarily.
It could mean the planet, it could mean all of Earth, but it also equally interprets and translates in the Bible to a country or a region. When Pompeii exploded, I mean, literally about the same time John was writing Revelation, I'm sure it devastated just about everything in that part of Italy, in that region of Italy. Burned it up, ruined everything. So maybe it is a third of the earth. Maybe North America, South America, Central America get totally destroyed, okay? Or it could be something more localized and specific. So people are saying, well, this couldn't have happened because, we still got all of the earth. We didn't lose a third of it. I know if we lost a third of it, I mean, that'd make the news, right? But, and that's kind of why I'm kind of like not leaning toward that, because people are going to be going about doing, peace and happiness and stuff like that. So, but there's going to be birth pains, Jesus says. It's going to get increasingly more intense. So more and more earthquakes, more and more things are happening. So I'm kind of in the camp that leans toward maybe an interpretation that's less than the entire earth. But we don't know. We don't know. It could be.
Well, you have to remember, though, the fake news will probably not report any
Right.
of this. So.
But when it says a third of the trees are burned up, that refers to the area that was previously mentioned. And a third, and all the grass was burned up. I mean, if all the grass on the earth was burned up, that's pretty much I don't know if it's the beginning of the end, it's probably the end of the end. I mean,
That's a lot.
so, but that, when it says all of that, it's referring to the area that was previously defined as G, which is, so we don't know what that is, but we do know it's going to be a significant event that God says, okay, I'm starting the trumpet judgments now, and the first one is, I'm going to wreak havoc on the earth, whatever that definition means.
I mean, could it be cumulative? Because look what just happened in LA. I mean, that's a huge.
It could be cumulative. It could be a third, because it doesn't say over time. I mentioned that down below. In the next thing, actually the third one. A lot of these trumpet judgments and things like that doesn't mean that it specifically happened, one afternoon. That between 3 and 3:15, a third of the earth was burned up. It just says a third of the earth was burned up. Just like we know that the horses went out to kill and destroy. Well, we know that took time. It wasn't like it just immediately killed a third. They brought death, and they only had the rights to kill a third. It didn't say they killed a third. But yeah, so that's a very good point. We don't know over what period of time, but Jesus doesn't tell us over what period of time. He tells us it's going to be increasing in intensity. Okay, let's jump to the second trumpet. These are the trumpet. The trumpets these are angels in God that have been given 7 trumpets, and every time they blast a trumpet in heaven, something bad's happening on earth. So the second trumpet does what? In verse 8 and 9.
The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood.
Okay, so again, you've got to remember, this is John seeing this stuff and trying to interpret it and write it down. He's writing down like crazy. He's recording what's going on, what he sees. So he says it's like a mountain. Some versions. So it could be, we don't know. It's what somebody might see something falling from heaven that looks like a mountain. I mean,
A volcano?
a lot of people think it's maybe a meteor or something like that
Oh.
hits the earth. And, but we also know that it says here again, it says, was thrown into what? What was it thrown into?
The sea.
The sea, not all the oceans of the world. It was thrown into the sea, a singular sea. Maybe the Mediterranean Sea,
Oh.
maybe the Sea of Galilee. Sea of Galilee's not that big. It's about, what would you say, Sam? 12 miles by 20 miles, I guess. So, I mean, literally see across it all four ways. But it gets 30-foot waves out there. The way the winds blow through, it's crazy. It's a small little, they call it sea. I mean, Buckeye Lake's probably, or not Buckeye, Lake Erie's probably bigger. It is definitely bigger. Lake Superior is definitely bigger. But the Sea of Galilee is a sea. And we don't know what sea. We don't know the Aegean Sea, the Caspian Sea. I mean, maybe it's the Pacific Ocean. We don't know. We know it's referred to as a sea, and it's a specific sea. It's the sea, unique, singular. So, again, if you just first read this, a lot of people would read this and go like, "Oh my gosh, a third of all the living creatures are going to get killed, right?" And that's pretty devastating. I mean, if you killed a third of the ocean, I mean, just the disease and bacteria alone would probably kill all of humanity within a matter of a month, I would think. But second trumpet, and then when it says third of the seas turn to blood, here again is God's reference to blood, which he has repeatedly, both here and with Egypt. A third of the living creatures in the sea, maybe a specific sea. And a third of the ships were destroyed, maybe because there's a wave, each wave. I mean, if you have something that's like a huge meteor hits a body of water, I'm guessing it's going to leave a pretty big wave, an impact crater of water that's going to, So, but again, we don't know. Did that happen in the past? Has it happened in the future? Is it yet to come? A lot of people also like to take some of these things and try to turn them into things about, well, this means the Roman nation, or this means, Caiaphas, or, Nero did this and stuff like that. And I think that's a stretch when you go through Revelation to start applying, physical descriptions that John's writing to wars and battles and kingdoms and Hitler and all that stuff. I think it probably means what it says it means. That there's going to be something that hits a body of water and totally destroys a sea. Second trumpet. Anyway, things are going to be getting bad. Now, also remember, we haven't talked about it yet. Okay, but these are plagues or things that are being created on earth. And the people that are on earth that see these or read about them in the evening news don't know where they come from or what caused them and stuff like that. So people like to blame who knows who. Third trumpet, Revelation 10. Somebody else.
The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter.
Okay, so whenever you see angel in the Bible, it will typically mean, whenever you see star in the Bible, it could mean one of three things. Either a celestial object, like a meteor. It's not going to be a star, okay? Because if a star hit the earth, I mean, like I mentioned, our sun's like one of the smallest ones, and if our sun slammed into the earth, there's nothing, it's game over, So when they say a star, it's either going to be a meteor-ish type thing, or it's going to be a heavenly being, either an angel or a fallen angel. So one of those three is what's typically used throughout the Bible interchangeably for a star. Because we're going to see later a star from heaven, and it's not really a star because it tells you right in the same verse it's an angel, a fallen angel, because it's a star that fell from earth or fell from heaven. This particular one kind of talks about a object of some type, because it actually gives it a name, wormwood. And wormwood is an actual plant here on earth. So John was familiar with this plant, and maybe he called it wormwood, or said it was called wormwood, because the plant is actually, it tastes incredibly bitter and makes anything you mix it in or put it in just too bitter to eat or drink. And it's still around today. But that's what the star, he said, was called. So maybe it was called bitter or something like that because it turned the water bitter. Maybe it had sulfur in it. I don't know. I don't know what it did or what it did. But we do know that water was made bitter, and many is kind of an undefined, more than one people died because of the water. So we don't know if it's like, I don't know what many is. I mean, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, who knows? 500? We just know people died. And again, this could be very, very targeted. We don't know how big it was. But it says a third of the fresh water, and again, it's talking about in that area, region, place, being. I mean, if it's a third of the fresh water on earth, again, we go back literally, all the Great Lakes, Amazon River, all the fresh waters of North America, Central America, and South America represent about 31% of the Earth's fresh water, excluding Antarctica. Antarctica, in and of itself, is 90% if you melted it. But yeah, as far as the flowing fresh water, so if it took out a third of all of the Earth's fresh water, that would be, beyond devastating. We wouldn't have to go to any more trumpets. So I don't think that's what's alluding here. Could be. Fourth and final trumpet of heaven, of the trumpet judgments on the earth. Revelation 8:12. Who's got it?
The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night.
Okay, so this isn't total darkness. What happened in Egypt with the plagues was total darkness. And what we're going to see later in the bowls poured out is total darkness. This is like what Jesus refers to in the Olivet Discourse. Says, before I come back, you're going to see a third of the sun. Remember, he says a third will be covered like sackcloth. It'll turn red and it'll be obscured. So, I mean, again, don't know if that's a result of a volcanic eruption. And we don't, again, you can't just assume that it's the entire world sees this. It could be just a region. It doesn't say. It's silent on that. It could be the whole world, or it could just be where John was looking at when he said, the angel says, look over here, down here, watch me, what am I going to do here? So those people down there, a third's light and a third of it's gone. It's covered up with whatever. It says it was obscured. Lack of light.
I never realized it, but at least these first four, it's only a third, which, I mean, it's a big number,
Everything is
but,
a third. You're right.
so there's like, God is showing some restraint at this point.
It still stays a third as we keep going forward. It's a third.
It's weird.
And again, and it's poured out specifically. They sound, at cursory reading, they sound incredibly devastating, like a third of the earth. Well, maybe it is a third of the earth. That would be incredibly devastating. Maybe it's a third of, this section or something like that. So it could be something that builds, and people in the rest of the part of the world go, yeah, it sucks to be them. They just got hit with a meteor. But, so now you've got beachfront property in Vegas. California's gone. But we don't know. I mean, but it does say that the world's going to continue and people are going to continue, you know, having fun and doing stuff. So it's not, you know, totally the end of the world yet. They're not buying it yet. People aren't buying it yet. Starts to get a little more intense. Again, it's back to what Jesus said. It's going to build in intensity like birth pains. So the fifth trumpet is when things kind of shift gears. If you look on your last page here, first four across the top, focused on the earth. The next three trumpets have specific names. They're referred to as the three woes. Okay? Whoa, yeah. So, who wants to read the first woe? 9-1.
You got it.
Got
The
it?
fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. Oh,
Okay. Well, okay, I can paraphrase going forward. Okay. So it says a star fallen, and he was given the key to the abyss, which is the underworld. So the star unlocks the underworld. So it's not a meteor, and it's not a heavenly angel, because it talks about he had fallen. It does say fallen, right? Somebody's translation?
It's fallen.
Huh? Fallen. So whenever it's typically referring to a fallen star, or that's kind of like a fallen angel, could be Satan or one of his underlings, you know? So we're told that he fell to earth, and read Exodus 10:4. Or is it? No, not 10. No, I'm sorry. Where it talks about like verse 3 or 4. Somebody got it?
You said Exodus?
9, Revelation 9:3. Start there. Just keep going a little bit further.
And out of the smoke,
Yeah.
locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any plant or any tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads.
Okay.
And they were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. During those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die.
Okay. So, so he unlocks the abyss, meaning underworld, and out of it comes smoke, and out of the smoke comes locusts. And normally, when you think locusts, what do locusts do? I mean, we had grasshoppers here that hit Vegas a few years back, right? They just eat everything green, right?
Anything green,
They
yeah.
consume it. But these are specifically told what?
Not to
They can't do it. So they can't eat. So who do they go after?
people.
People. Now, it's an interesting thing here. It says it goes after, they were told that they can't go after which people?
Ones with the seal of God on their
The
forehead.
people with the seal of God on their forehead. Don't know exactly what that means, doesn't say.
That's the first time we've heard about this, huh?
Well, no. If we go back, remember there was 144,000 men that were sealed for God to evangelize with a seal on their forehead. So
Oh,
this could be the 144,000, or maybe when the 144,000 are evangelizing, I mean, God doesn't have them evangelizing just to occupy space and time. People are being converted during this. So if the church is already gone, these are new converts. If the church is still here, they're part of the church. But if somebody gets converted, then they're probably sealed, and maybe that means the Holy Spirit, is on them. So we don't know. We just know that these things like locusts that sting like scorpions are specifically told that they cannot hurt Christians, people that have accepted Christ. So, so whoever's here that's accepted Christ, it's going to be like, they just, fly right by you, just ignore you. It'd be like hummingbirds, going by. Who cares? But the people that that don't have the mark of Christ on them, they're going to be attacked. And it goes on in great detail in Revelation 7 through 9, 7 through 11, where it talks about they've got gold crowns on, their faces are like men, they've got long hair. And John's trying to describe this. This is one thing he describes in really infinite detail. And you kind of wondering, people have always tried to think, are these like helicopters or things? You know, and funny, as I showed Mike the other day, that the Navy has a new swarming drone, a mini swarming drone that they have developed that they launch like by the thousands, tens of thousands that they send to a battlefield, stuff like that. And they're low cost operation, or low operation cost and control, strategic, something like that. Which
The acronym.
the acronym is LOCUS, and that's what they call them. It's their LOCUS. So, again,
Could be.
probably not a Navy drones that attack us, or that attack in Revelation 5, because it also refers that their king is Adonai. It says that toward the end of like verses 10, 11, 12, and his name translates to destroying angel. So they're a being that came out of the bottomless pit. So they came out of hell.
It's
So
gonna be worse than what you just said.
what's that?
It's gonna be worse than drones.
Yeah, yeah. But not for us. I mean,
No.
if we're here, not a problem. Of course, if whoever's here that's Christian, and these things are just ignoring them, and the people over here, and let's say you're not a Christian, and you're just getting like eat up with these things. There's like 12 of them climbing all over you, stinging you and biting you, right? And you can't get them off fast enough. You're gonna get really pissed at me sitting here going, man, it sucks to be you, you know? You should talk to my Jesus. We can fix this. But yeah, I think that's gonna help create a polarization between those that are for Christ and those that aren't. But, like I said, John goes through a very, very detailed description of what they look like. This is the one time in Revelation where the trumpet judgments, bowl judgments, it has a specific period of 5 months. So we know this has a finite start and finish on the 5 months of the pain and things like that. We don't know how long any of the other trumpets are going on, but this one, 5 months.
You'd like to think that a lot of those people getting stung would become Christians just to stop from getting stung.
You'd think, but it's amazing. A lot of them don't. So going on to the next page, the sixth trumpet. Okay, we're getting toward the end of the trumpet judgments.
We cannot fool God, like He will know what is in our heart.
Yes,
He just baptized with that, but then He knows what is.
he knows everybody. And Satan knows who you are, who's Christians and who's not Christians. So the sixth trumpet starts in 9 or 13 and goes to 21. Rather than reading it, I'll kind of paraphrase it here. It's referred to as the second woe. Go ahead and read it. It talks about 4 angels. We don't know whether they're heavenly angels or fallen angels, but they've been bound up and tied, prohibited at the river Euphrates. So they're probably fallen angels that have been restrained to wreak havoc on the earth. And it says they're released to kill 1/3 of mankind. And this one's pretty definitive. But it doesn't say that they do it on Tuesday. It says that they're released to kill 1/3 of mankind. And we don't know over what period of time. I'll give you a little bit of information on that here in a minute. But John says that they kill by the plagues. They're killing by plagues that come out, or the plagues that come out of their mouth. And he says that they're leading an army that is 2 times 10,000 times 10,000. And he even comments and says, "No, I heard the number." So he's like going, "It sounds crazy, but I heard it. It's 200 million people in this army. So it's a big army." It says they come from the east, and they kill mankind. And this is the second woe. But there's a slide here I'll show you. Slide picture. It's a map. Because this is the sixth trumpet. So they're coming from the east over here, headed toward Israel over here. Okay, I cobbled some stuff together. But they get to the river Euphrates, okay? And they stop. They can't cross the river Euphrates. Not sure why. Doesn't say why. But maybe the water's up. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's something, it's full of Nile crocodiles. I don't know what it is. But the army masses in the area here, which we refer to as Iran, Iraq, here, they can't cross the river Euphrates. Now, when the bowls start pouring out, when the sixth bowl pours out, it says, oh, you remember that army? They're still there. They're waiting. And guess what? Now they cross. So again, things happen over a period of time. We don't know whether it's months, weeks, days, years, but we know the army's coming this way, and then it gets to this point and it stops in the general area of Baghdad, places like that, and then moves forward only when I think it's the sixth bowl. I haven't got my notes on that with me. But interesting thing, back to the Olivet Discord, Matthew 24, verses 22, because things are getting pretty bad now. And maybe they'll last all 7 years, like it says. But Jesus has an interesting comment. He wants to read Matthew 24, 22.
And hearing this, they were amazed. And leaving him, they went away. Jesus answers the Sadducees. On that day, some Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus and questioned him, asking, Teacher, Moses...
Matthew 24, 22?
24, 22.
Maybe I wrote down the wrong one.
Matthew 24, 22.
Mine doesn't say that.
Okay, read yours.
Matthew 22, man.
If those days,
Okay, hold on. Here we go.
if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here's the Messiah, or
So
there
that's
he
where
is.
he's warning them again about the Messiah. But remember, see what he says about the days? He says, if those days had not been cut short. In other words, it sounds like God or Jesus is going to say, okay, we need to wrap this up. We can't drag it out anymore because it's just too intense. We need to. Maybe this is where he's talking about coming down and rapturing the church, because he refers to who? Go ahead and read it again. The first part. The elect,
The elect.
right? So the elect is referring to who? Well, believers. We don't know if it's the church from before or believers in Revelation, but we know that he doesn't want bad things to happen to the elect, so he's going to cut the days short, and we don't know if that means cut Revelation short or cut the days short for them so that they can leave and get out of Dodge. But if it's the rapture, then that's referring to the church, because there's not two raptures. There's not a rapture and then a second rapture, because the people that are on earth through Revelation literally go right to the end. They are either martyred or they make it to the Mount of Olives on the last day. And this is the second woe, okay? So the sixth trumpet is the second woe. And this is all about the angels getting ready to march across. So they're coming across. We've got an interlude here, which I'm not going to get into. It talks about the angel and the scroll. Feel free to read about it in Revelation 10. Seven thunders. John, one thing that's interesting about it is John, he heard something that the quote-unquote seven thunders said, and he was writing it down, and then the angel said, no. You can listen to it, but you can't write it down. You can hear it, you can understand it, but I don't want anybody to read that 1,000 years from now. That's not for them. We don't know if it was like too intense, because some of the stuff's pretty intense, or maybe it was too revealing, or maybe it was somebody specific, you know, I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, it's interesting that we know that John heard it, and we know that it was important, but we know also that we're not allowed to know it.
Is that
Yeah.
it? Chapter 10?
Yeah. Anyway, so let's jump ahead.
Just before you jump ahead.
Yeah,
Can
go
we
for it.
jump back for 1 second?
Sure.
So when you have a note on here, it says, so the second woe has passed.
Yes.
Revelation 9:12. What do you mean by that?
Okay, the first 4 trumpets were trumpet judgments on the earth. Okay? And then if we look at, somebody read Revelation 9:1.
Then the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen to earth from the sky and was given to the shaft of the bottomless pit.
Okay, maybe that's not. But what it refers to is at the end of that trumpet, before the, so Revelation 12, 9:12. Read
9:12.
9:12.
The first terror is past, but look, 2 more terrors are coming. Oh, so it's just,
So your translation says terror. The
Yeah.
first terror has passed, but 2 more terrors are coming.
Mine
Okay.
says woe.
Yours says woe. The first woe has passed, 2 more woes are coming. So these are the trumpet judgments. They're the last 3. They're more intense than the first 3, so much so that the angel says, this is a woe on the earth. And it actually says in there, I'm not sure where I didn't write it down, but it says, woe, woe, woe is mankind because of the judgments about to befall them. So these are referred to as the 3 woes or the 3 terrors.
so it's just saying that
It's-
that's done before the next one.
Right. So the first woe is done, we know,
Okay.
and then the second woe. So these are sequential again,
Gotcha.
kind of like that one picture I had over there somewhere. Everyone of yeah, here. This picture. So you know, this one happens. 5 happens, then 6 happens, and then 7. We're going to find out is kind of like with 5. So it's like, wait a minute. Did it happen or not? No, the interlude. So the second woe is passed. That's the 6th trumpet. Okay. Now we've got this thing that's just kind of stuck in there with the scrolls, and then we're going to hit the 2 witnesses. Okay. So this is Revelation 10. I guess is it the last half of 10? 11. Revelation 11. The 2 witnesses.
Yeah, 11.
Okay, so that's a typo. So there are 2 witnesses that God talks about in the end times. And if you, on your charts, that chart at the beginning, they're pretty important because they're, down here it says, 2 witnesses for 1,260 days. So we know they're going to be witnessing. The likelihood is they start right when the treaty is signed, and 1,260 days puts them dead center on the 7 years. I mean, if you do the math, 1,260 days, if it's a 30-day month, it is dead center. It's 42 months, and that's dead center. That's when they get killed. Okay? So they're witnessing on the Temple Mount, and it's 2 witnesses. It just refers to those 2 witnesses. However, in Hebrews it says, Hebrews 9 it says, man is appointed once to die, and after that the judgment, right? And Romans 6:23 it says the wages of sin are death, right? So, because, we sin, we die. Jesus died even though he didn't sin. He went to the cross for us for that reason. And this is Nostradamus talking. Now, I'll paraphrase it. But there are 2 people in the Bible that never died. Do you know who they are? Elijah was taken away on a chariot of fire to heaven. Do you know who the other one was?
The apostle.
Enoch was in the Old Testament. It said Enoch walked with God and he was no more. And the definition for that was he didn't die. So Enoch and Elijah never died. And there's 2 witnesses in Revelation that just appear, boom, and they witness, and they're dressed in sackcloth. Now, somebody read Malachi 4:5. This is like the last verse in the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 4, verse 5. There's only 2 verses. There's one more verse after, and that's it. The Old Testament's done.
See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children, and the hearts of the children to their parents, or else I will come and strike the land with total
So
destruction.
when is the great and powerful day of the Lord? It refers to the day of the Lord. That's the last, when Jesus comes back and stands on the Mount of Olives and splits the wall of Jerusalem. That's referred to as the day of the Lord. That's what, the Old Testament is driven toward that moment. It's when Jerusalem cries out to God, to Jesus, or to God, and says, we screwed up, we killed the Messiah, we messed up. And then Jesus comes and boom, he's there and starts the day of the Lord. And here in Malachi, it's saying, before that day happens, he's going to send Elijah back to witness. So, maybe, so we don't know. But, we know Elijah's coming back.
That's in what
He's
chapter,
probably
Malachi?
not going to work at Starbucks or, hang out, be a Walmart checker. So he's going to be doing something kind of important. And the 2 witnesses are very, very important. It says they're dressed in sackcloth and Old Testament clothing and stuff like that. So they're there for 1,260 days. It says they're on the Temple Mount. So they're there on the Temple Mount, prophesying and speaking to the people that are there. And it says when anybody approaches them to shut them up or to, kill them or arrest them or whatever like that, fire comes from their mouth. Now, maybe it's real fire, but it says fire comes from their mouth, and the people are consumed. The people that are trying to kill them. So anybody that tries to kill them is consumed with fire that comes from their mouth. So they're left unaccosted on Temple Mount for 3.5 years, 1,260 days. During this time, they're prophesying. It says that no rain comes. I don't know if that means just there or the whole world. It doesn't say. It just says that that no rain comes while they're prophesying for 1,260 days. It says they had the power to turn water to blood. Where did we hear that at? That was like one of the trumpets just before. And they have the power to strike the earth with every kind of plague. So remember those locust things that were attacking? My guess is these guys get blamed for everything that happens during that time period. So maybe the trumpet judgments are going on while these guys are prophesying. It says that after 1,260 days, okay, we'll come back to that, what's going on while they're prophesying. It says after 1,260 days, something happens. It says the Antichrist shows up, overpowers and kills them. Okay? Now, you're thinking, well, why didn't the Antichrist show up earlier? We'll pick that up a little bit later because he was busy doing something else. So it says, so the Antichrist shows up. He's upset. He kills them. Now, we don't know if he kills them just because he's stronger than them, which is quite possible, or because God, because they basically just say, okay, we're done, and they don't defend themselves. So we don't know exactly the circumstances. We just know that it says that the Antichrist shows up, kills them, and their bodies lay in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 days. The Bible says in Babylon, the old Egyptian city, the city where Christ died. So all of those things are referring to Jerusalem. So Jerusalem kind of gets renamed Babylon during this time by some people. Maybe it's because of the Antichrist. But it is in Jerusalem where they get killed. They lay there for 3.5 days. It says every tribe, nation, people will gaze on their bodies and refuse to bury them. Okay, so how is, and when it says here against nation, it says every people, tribe, people refers to kingdom, tribe, nation or country, language, and nation, ethnicity, will look upon them, will gaze on their bodies, and refuse them burial. So how is everybody in the earth going to gaze on their bodies? Tell me that, huh?
TV.
TV, internet. So that's interesting because if the world was really coming apart like the first 3 or 4 trumpets kind of allude to, I'm guessing internet's not going to be working real well. I mean, maybe Starlink, but power's going to be hard to come by. But it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like that the world isn't completely unraveled at this point. It's not. It's the whole world doesn't look like Gaza, okay? Because it says that people will gloat over them and celebrate by sending each other gifts. So they're going to be happy. Most of the world's going to be happy these 2 guys died, because that means all the bad stuff that was going on is going to stop, because the Antichrist just took care of it for us. And all those locust things are going to go away. And maybe that coincides with that, because we do know that after 3.5 days, these guys stand up, they're taken up into heaven, and there's an earthquake in Jerusalem. 7,000 people, exactly 7,000 people die, and the people that don't die, that see this, a lot of them become Christians, and because it says they give glory to God. So they're being converted at that point. And then what's verse 11, Revelation 11:14 say?
The second terror is past, but look, the third terror is coming. Oh, then well.
Yeah. Well, we just had that.
Yeah.
That was when the 6th trumpet. When the 6th trumpet ended, that's when the second woe ended. But now, after 3.5 years of the prophets, of the 2 witnesses testifying, it says the second woe is ended. So these things are going on concurrently in Revelation. And then they both end at the same time. So the 6th trumpet ends when the witnesses die, which is kind of interesting. And we know that to be exactly 1,260 days from the start. So that means that we don't know when the seals start, but we know kind of when. We now have one fixed point we can put, because God says 1,260 days they die, second woe is passed. Now, maybe there's an interlude, maybe the second woe, maybe they end and it kind of like shuffles a little bit, but we know that the end of the 6th trumpet and the 2 witnesses being taken to heaven are pretty much at the same time, because they both happen that's when the second woe passes. Third woe is the last trumpet, and it's in Revelation 11. You have to jump to 11:15.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because on this picture you put like the 2 witnesses, 50 days,
Let me catch up with you. Hold on a second.
slain, 3.5 days,
Yes.
resurrection, and rapture.
I should have whited out the word rapture. That's his opinion. Okay.
Oh.
So some people think that when the witnesses go to heaven, then that's the rapture, because that's when people like to talk about this particular person had the rapture here. Some people think that right here in the middle, at 3.5 years, it's a perfect time for a rapture, but probably not, because everybody's going to know it's 1,260 days, and you're going to be counting down, to the day. So maybe not. This particular one says, well, maybe the 1,260 days are here, and then the rapture is somewhere further along. Maybe it's it shifts a little bit. We don't know. So the fact that it says rapture on that one thing is just one man's opinion. Nobody knows. We do know that we will be raptured And, you know, like I mentioned before, when we meet him in the air, because we talked about that, who was it just said that? With palm branches. Oh, the people, the thousands and 10,000s that were around the throne had palm branches and stuff like that. But it says we will meet Jesus in the air. It says that when he comes back for his church. But what we don't know is when we meet him in the air, then do we follow him back to heaven, or do we follow him back down to earth? I mean, and how long does it take him from when we meet him in the air for him to get to earth? Is it, 30 minutes, or is it, 2 years? I mean, we don't know. I mean, time is one of those things that once you leave earth time and get into heavenly time, it's not, don't assume it's exactly the same, because it may be, it may seem like minutes to us, but it may be longer. I mean, a lot of people, Mike's probably done more reading than anybody I know about people that have had near-death experiences and how they describe it. And the vast majority of them talk about some period of time that they're going through this process, and it's days or weeks or maybe longer, and yet they're only on the operating table and they're dead for like maybe just a few minutes, but it seems longer. I've had dreams like that. I've had a dream where I thought it was 2 or 3 months long, and it was just a short dream that probably happened like that. So we don't know the time of the rapture, and that's kind of why we just got to prepare for it. What we do know is we can look at some of these signs that are coming up, and we'll get to maybe another hypothesis on when the rapture is. This could be it. We know the 2 witnesses are taken back up. The 7th trumpet is the 3rd woe, and this is when it's really not, it's not, you think, well, that's not that bad, because it talks about when the 7th trumpet happens, it's heaven's opened up. We can see the throne room of God. We can see the Ark of the Covenant. We can see into the temple room, and there's there's hail and there's some earth lightning and stuff like that, and maybe an earthquake, and there's like rumblings and stuff like that, but it doesn't sound that bad. It's just like, there's just things going on, and it's all in heaven. So you think, well, that wasn't that bad. But what that represents, the 7th trumpet, is the reason it's the 7th woe is because the 7th the trumpet blowing actually starts the 7 bowls that pour out, and that's what we're going to hit. No, we don't do that next week. We've got a couple other things before we get to it. It'll be the week after next. We do the 7 bowls. But yeah, the 7 bowls are really bad, and the likelihood is the 7 bowls, just because of the nature of the severity that they are. I can't imagine from the first bowl to the last bowl being longer than a week, or less. Because there's no way mankind can survive, the wrath. Because this is what's referred to as the wrath of God. That's the 7 bowls. You get the 7 seals, and you get the 7 trumpet judgments, which are primarily judgments on the earth, and then a little bit on the people that don't believe, that don't have the seal of Christ, and then the wrath comes out. And the likelihood is we're not here, because it talks in the Bible about a certain group of people being protected during that time, and it's like they've got this force field over them of angels, shielding them and protecting them, which is pretty cool when you think about it, because it specifically says, it not only says that they've got a force field and shield over them, but it says where it is. And I'll show you a picture. We actually got to go there, my wife and I, which is, it gave me goosebumps. I was just having goosebumps, because I'm thinking, I'm right here, and this is where the Bible says they're going to be, and they're going to be protected, and it's kind of cool, but we'll get to that. But the bowls are so intense that nothing is spared. I mean, it's just total destruction. So I can't believe that we're going to be here then. Because, well, if we are, it's going to be like it was in Egypt, where the Israelites were protected from the wrath of God in the land of Goshen while the plagues hit Egypt. I mean, that could be it. It doesn't mention it anywhere in Revelation at all. So if we are still here and we're in a bubble somewhere, like, you know, maybe hanging out in the dome somewhere,
That's at the very end, right?
that's at the very, very end. It's literally the last
And-
week before the Battle of Armageddon and Christ dealing with everything, setting things up.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that we would be here. I mean, us, maybe the people
Well,
that became believers are
And that's
still alive.
absolutely true. He's absolutely right, because it does talk about the elect or the people, you know, the people, and we're going to read next week about some people that were saved and that are saved. Well, we read tonight about when the witnesses went back up, 7,000 people died in the earthquake, and the people that were left there, a lot of them saw the witnesses go back up to heaven. They went like, they were men of God. God's real. I need to get my life together. I need to accept Christ as my Lord and Savior. And they were converted. Now, that doesn't mean they get they zip up into the sky too. They're still here, and they'll some of them will actually live all the way through to the last day of Revelation, Battle of Armageddon. They'll be there. Some of them will be in Jerusalem at that time, or other parts. So there will be Christians and Jews at the very last minute of the last day when Jesus is standing on the Mount of Olives, looking down at the Temple Mount.
But the ones saved after the rapture.
Right. That's going to be
The reason I was thinking too, it can't be us.
I'm
is
sorry?
that- The reason I was thinking too, it can't be us pre-rapture Christians, is because at the very end, when Christ returns with the army, it says he returns with the saints. So
We come with him.
we have to be in heaven.
Right. Or
And
we got raptured 6 months before, and we go up and it doesn't say how far we go up. It says we meet him in the sky, but the sky can be pretty big. I mean, maybe it's like Pluto or something like that. We catch a ride, come back, or maybe when we go up, it's like a time travel shift, and we leave on March 1st, and we come back. For us, 10 seconds later, and it's December 13th or something. We don't know, but we know it's going to happen, and we know it's going to be. The takeaway is, it gets more and more intense. It starts slow. There's nothing in the Bible that says it's going to be so obvious that everybody knows way ahead of time. It's like most people are going to be in denial of it. That's why I always wonder about the whole Left Behind series and stuff like that. Because if you took hundreds of millions of people off the face of the earth, it's going to be pretty obvious that something catastrophic happened. I'm not sure how it'll happen, but it'll be done in a way that the action in and of itself won't result in conversions. I don't think. I think people will still be in denial because they're going to be like in the days of Noah. They just keep going and doing what they're doing as they slowly move forward down that path. But one of the things I think you mentioned, you wanted to what's going on and stuff like that in Revelation and things like that. How's it tied to today? And it's crazy, but I mean, it's not only a topic that's becoming more and more important. It becomes more and more of something we need to know what the Bible says about it, so that we can hold up a litmus test and say, okay, does that match? Okay, no, okay, or maybe it does, because things are happening. It's crazy. I just showed Mike an article. I don't know if you guys have been reading the news today. Trump met with Netanyahu in Washington, and and announced that they reached an agreement. Again, it's Trump, so you see his mouth moving, and you never know for sure if he even believes everything he says. But he says that Netanyahu's going to give us the Gaza, and the United States is going to rebuild it and populate it, and we will own the land. It'll be a long-term lease that we'll occupy and put in military base.
Because he's telling the Palestinians, don't live back there.
He didn't say. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
But Israel controls the land today. They control it. The Palestinians live there, but
Well, they went hands off 15 years ago.
but right now it's, yeah.
Trump said he's gonna, yes,
I know.
a big part of it is rebuild.
So my point, yeah, the point is Israel is continuing to be a very, very, very focal point of what's going on today. So it'll be good for us to go the next couple weeks. I think next week we're gonna learn all about the mark of the beast and the dragon,
Dragon Day.
the dragon lady and the angels, yeah, and the seven-headed, the prophet, the beast and the prophet, and so it'll be kind of I guess a little separation. We get the seals, the trumpets, a little side thing here, and then we get the wrath. Because I think even in the side thing, we'll talk about the war in heaven, which is going to come now, which is pretty cool. Huge war in heaven that hasn't happened yet. We know that, and it's going to happen, and we'll find out what the ramifications of all that are. And then after that happens, bowls, and then literally all hell breaks loose.
But I'm gonna be floating up there in a cloud somewhere,
Yeah.
looking down on the
you're
earth.
checking the green ticket to get out of here, so. Any questions, comments?
Are we gonna learn more about the Antichrist?
Yes. Yeah, that's next week.
Okay.
We're gonna it'll be mostly about the Antichrist next week. Yeah, and where he comes from, and I'll not only give you, I'll give you both the Bible. I may throw in a little bit of Quran in there too, because, and I may get in trouble for this one. So actually, the video's still going, but I mean, Satan is the opposite. He everything Christ says and does, Satan does opposite and against him. It's just like everything. Okay? So this is how Jesus is going to do it and come back. Satan's got a similar plan, but it's exactly the opposite. And he's going to do stuff. I mean, this Revelations isn't going to happen just the way, without Satan kind of doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, Jesus warns us. There's going to be false prophets. There's going to be bad things. Don't listen to anybody. Just stay focused on what you stay focused on. But we'll touch a little bit on hypothetically what some of those things could be that are in things like the Quran, because it says, okay, it's not this way, it's this way. And it might be worth knowing because while we're waiting for this to happen, this may happen first. Because Satan always likes to preempt Christ.
So the Quran has sort of a book of Revelation? in it?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in great detail.
Wow.
Yeah. Talks about Jesus coming back. Talks about, gives you lots of details, lots of things. And if those things start happening, I guarantee you the Muslims are going to go like, see, we were right. Your Jesus hasn't showed up yet. You're wrong. We're right. We win.
The great deceiver.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's my point. Yeah. But yeah.
So
But
close to the
the-
truth, but.
And I think there's going to be, people. I watched some videos of kids on college campuses believing stupid stuff and challenging pastors and preachers because they just don't know the facts and they just believe whatever they hear. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people like that as we get closer and closer to the end. That if something happens and they're just told this, and this. And they're like, oh, okay, well, that must be right.
Where's that verse that says, professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the word of God for a lie? Something like that.
You guys can play pinball now. Just press the button on the left.
Is there a pinball machine up there? I think they've been listening to your lesson.
I don't think they have.
Daddy, is there really gonna be dragons flying around?
Scorpion tails.
Yeah.
I can hear it in that tonight.
Anyway, any other questions or thoughts, comments? Again,
Wanna see that picture that you say?
The sphere.
I'm sorry?
Oh.
The picture,
The picture of,
The sphere, like the,
oh, that's not tonight. It's next week.
but it exists,
It exists.
that place exists.
The picture of what?
The picture
You'll
that
see
you
it
took.
next week.
Oh.
Tonight's not show and tell. Next week's show and tell.
He's not listening.
Well, I remember you said like
Yeah,
you
but,
said like
You wanna come back?
See, there's so many
Yeah.
things in the Bible. See, everything in the
Yeah.
Bible. I mean,
The
that's
picture
what's
of
crazy
I didn't understand
about
what he
the
was
Bible
talking about.
Is
The force field.
all, I mean, nothing in
like, I feel like
in
it's
the
like
Korean
a
has ever
bubble
been
of like
validated by
protection.
And he has a picture of a
archaeological fact.
bubble.
There's so much
Like
archaeological
force
record
field.
for everything in the
Huh?
Bible.
Yeah.
They
I
were
mean,
there visiting.
everything.
The force field.
Even like I was talking with
I think it
somebody
probably just had a
about
smudge on his
Mary
camera
Magdalene,
lens.
Have
right?
you ever watched
Mary
Simpsons?
Magdalene. She was from Magdala, but nobody knew where Magdala was. Magdala didn't exist. There's no historical record of where Magdala was. But Jesus met Mary at Magdala, and so you think, well, Jesus met Mary at Magdala, then Magdala had to be somewhere in the general area of Sea of Galilee area-ish. But no record, nothing like that, other than that the Bible mentions a city that Mary's from, and Jesus goes there and preaches in the temple and stuff like that. It didn't exist. We go over there literally, it was like just a couple years before we were there. In 2009, the guy had a dream. Now, I'm just repeating. He had a dream, he says, and he was told to go by a parking lot. And a parking lot in a field, and to start digging. And that's what an angel told him in his dream. So he goes and buys this field and parking lot because that's what he says he heard in a dream from an angel. And they're digging in the parking lot, digging in the field, digging it through, and they start finding, walls and rooms and streets. And then they open it up, and there's a foundation of a Jewish synagogue. And on the outside thing it says Magdala. They literally found Magdala in 2009. I mean, that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
For 2,000 years, they've been totally lost, buried under 6 feet, 4 feet of dirt in the parking lot. Yeah, and I actually went there, and I was showing Mike a picture. There's the Jewish temple is smaller than my living room kitchen combined. It's about 2/3 the size. So maybe it holds like 40 people, tops. But there's one place that's marble mosaic where you would stand and read the Torah, right? And of course, if you're in the Jewish temple, you're barefoot. You're not walking in with dirty sandals on. You take your sandals off outside, you walk in barefoot, you stand on the marble floor globally and read the Torah, right? And they discovered this in 2009. I got to put my hand on the tile of the floor there. That's
Yeah,
where Jesus stood.
Because it's circular. So you
I mean, he
picture he's
literally
standing in the middle of
stood
the
there
circle.
with his bare feet,
Yeah.
and I get to touch those mosaic little pieces of tile that made a little pattern there. I mean, literally, I just like goosebumps. It just gives you goosebumps when you think, I'm touching tile that was only on Earth 10 years, less than 10 years when we were there, less than 10 years before, that Jesus, last time it was open, Jesus was standing here, it's like, but again, the Bible is so full of so much fact and detail. You gotta believe it. Just don't. If you ever question it, call somebody and say, hey, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how this can be this way and that way, but there's probably a reason. It's all there for a reason.
I remember a long time ago reading an article about one of the generals. This was in the early days when